from a training exercise. This has actually happened, where a training exercise with a gun resulted in a shot that took out the base defenses by basically hitting the thing that you shouldn't hit on the big turbo laser, blew up half the base. So and there you're left as a dungeon master going,
Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. This is the Dungeon Master Roundtable number 7. I don't know which question we're answering in this particular one, but it doesn't matter. In any case, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Mark from Dungeon Class. We normally have Gonzo and Logan on our channel. We take turns talking about, we talk together usually about different D&D topics in 5th edition. Mostly all about the fun and not necessarily all the crunchy, important rules and stuff, but ways to make your game more fun.
Josiah, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. My name is Josiah. My YouTube channel is called Dungeon Dad. If you can pass a DC 5 survival check on YouTube and punch that into the search bar, it's a little thing with the spyglass at the top there, I'm sure you'll find it no problem.
What about you, AJ? Would you like to introduce yourself?
I would argue a constitution check is actually appropriate for making the effort of actually typing something into the search bar. Link or get out. My name is AJ Pickett. You can find me on YouTube with my name. I make a channel which more people have fallen asleep to my videos than any other D&D YouTuber. I will guarantee this, because I make long form, heavy lore videos where I take people on a narrative journey where they learn about the Dungeons and Dragons as if they've actually gone there.
Soothing sounds of AJ Pickett.
Mate, the number of people in your live streams who make that comment, there's so many, AJ. It was very, very funny, I have to say. But good for you, because apparently they are willing to pay for that sleep therapy on Patreon on numerous occasions. So that's a good thing. The rest of us
double dip, dude.
Yeah, man, none of us have actually figured out that we need to make content that puts people to sleep. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a question. This is one mechanic that I think a lot of people like, but there's a huge chunk of people who really dislike it for a number of different reasons. And that is group checks. So do you use group checks in your Dungeons and Dragons 5e games? Why or why not? Mark, what have you got to say?
Yeah, I pretty much use it mostly for stealth check kind of situations. That's where I use it most prevalently. They are like, oh, we want to sneak up to a camp. And I like that a lot because usually, typically the roll goes that's good. And there's always that one that doesn't roll too well and clang, 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 clang. So hilarity ensues usually in that situation. But I also like to use it like if they're trying to escape something, a series of skill checks, actually, more or less. But the group gets involved working together and there's a series of rolls. But generally just stealth more than anything. But I really don't use it for... I really don't want to use it for group investigation check or something like that. That does not make, even though they all want to do that, let's all roll. No, we're not going there. But pretty much stealth.
What about you, Josiah? Do you use group checks in your game?
Yeah, I would say group checks summed up in one word are sublime. I'm a big fan of group checks. I call for group checks pretty frequently when the situation calls for it. I like you said, Mark, stealth checks is like the classic example, but I typically, like, say we have 5 party members, we'll call for a group check, and like if 3 of them pass, then the party passes kind of thing. And that will allow for a lot of neat little story moments, which is fun. So like in the stealth situation, for example, you say you roll a stealth check for everyone passes except for like your paladin who's in their big armor clanking their way through. And it can be fun then to take whoever rolled the highest, say your rogue who rolled like a 27 or something, is like, stop, shut up, like, no, step there, like, this is what you need to do. Like, they're making up for the person in the party who would otherwise just be blowing it entirely. But I do like calling for them whenever there's a situation where the group, much as the name would suggest, is trying to achieve something all simultaneously. Like say they're trying to hold the door shut to like prevent a monster from breaking in or something, and you roll like a group athletics check to do something like that. Obviously your stronger members are going to do better. As a party, I think it can really help those members shine in a way that lifts up everybody. I think something I also do as well, which I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I have in the past in certain situations allowed a character who has like a good bonus to something to take disadvantage on the roll in a group check to give advantage to another character who sucks at it. So say the party is like trying to scale the side of a cliff, your barbarian is obviously going to be able to do that in their sleep. But if they take disadvantage on the roll, they can then give advantage to like the wizard or something. And then we put that in game narratively as like the barbarian has them tied around their waist and is like pulling them up basically. So they're sucking more at the thing they're good at, but they're making the person who sucks at it do a little bit better. So stuff like that can be really fun if you, I guess really the end of the day, I always just try to think about what the implications of rolling a group check are and like what that actually represents in the context of the game that's happening.
What about you, AJ? Do you use group checks in your game, and how do you use them if you do at all?
I do, not as much as Josiah. I think I'm somewhere on the far end of the other side of the spectrum in regards to group checks. I think that the skill checks from 4th edition went a long way towards describing how to use group skill checks in a way that informed dungeon masters, and people who didn't play 4th edition probably don't have the same care for it, like don't have the greater understanding of how you can make entire encounters run smoothly just using these dice rolls in a system that the players understand. They've got objectives, they know what they're shooting for, and they can wriggle around the side of it. Like that a system is working well when the player will start picking up the character sheet and rules lawyering as to exactly why they can use persuasion to get the store open, So it ties in with my comment on a previous or upcoming video. I don't know when it's going to appear on passive skill checks, that the skill checks for group roles apply to all the skills. It's not just stealth. It's not just strength, tug of war type thing. Granted, it really is a time where a character with a really strong suit will pair up with a character with a really crappy one to compensate and thereby sort of nerf themselves in a way. So there's that aspect to it too. And also it really highlights when somebody's made a character with a glaring flaw that is going to dampen the style of another player character at the table that you might not have realized during character creation, that there's this unfortunate synergy between the two. So I think it's an important discussion to have in your group about who's got a glaring weakness and who's got a glaring strength, and whether or not you want those two to play off against each other or not.
Yeah, so I found the idea of group checks really appealing, and I guess it's because of my experience playing Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. And the dungeon master we were playing with wasn't me; it was somebody else, and it carried on to other people who were doing the same sort of thing. And that is, you would make a stealth check to try and sneak past the monster, and everybody would roll, and they'd do pretty well. And then there'd be one person who was in heavy armor who would roll stink, and that one person was the ultimate decision about what would happen. Okay, they made too much noise. The monster hears you. And everybody suffered, and it was almost, we used to hate making a group check to stealth past anything, because we knew we could never do it. It was just never going to be pulled off. There was nothing you could do, and so this sort of sorts out that one or two individuals, but usually it's just one individual, right? But there might be two, depending on how big your group is, who, they're rolling a 20-sided dice. They've got a very small modifier. They're going to get low. They're probably going to drag the whole party down with whatever kind of group check they do, if everybody has to succeed. So I actually like the idea that only half the group needs to succeed. So if you've got 4 people, only 2 need to succeed. If you've got 5, you need 3. Okay, so that's cool. I'm fine with that. I guess what I find, and I still have to agree with people who dislike the group check, is I would agree that if you use group checks as written in the player's handbook and as detailed in the Dungeon Master Guide, any guidance around that, that the chances are the group is always going to succeed on the check. And I want to explain why I think that's actually not bad. I think it's a good thing when the group decide to work together for the same goal and achieve it. And if they can do that, if we can finally get them to make the same decision and do the same thing and go in the same direction and work together, then let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they should be able to be more successful more often than if they try to do it on their own, rather than just one person. Otherwise, we always have the rogue sneaking off on their own because they're better at doing that than anybody else. We always have the fighter trying to lift the big, heavy portcullis because nobody else is strong enough. So I just go with that. And I yes, group checks mean that your group is probably going to succeed more often than not. There's only a couple of times when I don't use a group check. And I've used it for many different skills, and that is passive perception or a perception check, and it's related to discovering the location of monsters, because monsters need to have that ambush opportunity because they just will not survive in Dungeons and Dragons 5e. You got one, two, 3 rounds, it's all over. If they can't do something, there's almost no point even having an encounter sometimes with some of the monsters. So they have to be able to ambush. So that's the one time when I won't do it. But I would allow a perception check as a group check if they're looking for something in a room, like whether it be a secret door or they're looking for something that's been hidden under a mattress, that sort of stuff. That's different. But when it comes to monsters, I leave that alone.
Here's like a little baby question. This question is now giving birth to a micro question, if you'll allow it. Something I have used in the past, which I'm curious to know what you guys think, is like degrees of success with a group check. So you have a group check where they're trying to do something, say you have 5 party members, and in your head or written down, you have like, say 3 outcomes. Like outcome A is like everyone passes. This is exactly what the party wants. Outcome B is like the majority pass, but you still have like 2 failures where like they succeed, but also X happens. And then outcome C being like everyone fails except for maybe one person, if that. And like that's obviously your fail state, which is obviously like normally as written, you have like success, failure. But what do you guys think about having something that's like in between? If half the party succeeds, they still get to do the thing, but also another thing happens that might put an obstacle in their way.
I love that idea. Yeah, because it actually, often there are varying degrees of success in life. Like you don't necessarily hit the goal head on that you really wanted, but it's close to what you wanted. And so that makes more sense to me that, you guys made the leap across, but you lost that magic item, fell out of the bag in the process that you had, or something you had stuck, you didn't really secure it well, and you've lost that over the cliff. You made it, but there was a cost to that. So that's a neat little element. I like that. I like that a lot, not just success and failure.
Mm. Yeah, it's got many advantages. In fact, several gaming systems are built around that as an excuse to include more narrative. They almost cram more narrative on you. So, for instance, the new Star Wars games, Edge of the Empire, Old Republic, those
that
games.
Is exactly where I stole that idea.
Yeah.
Edge of the Empire.
So dice pool games where you're rolling lots of dice and you're aggregating the results, they tend to be that sort of system. I came up with a system, the simplest role-playing system I've ever come up with, and also the most heavy metal, was called the D4 system, where essentially you roll a D4 for every single outcome of a thing. Your 1 is you've failed with a complication, 2 is you've made a basic failure, 3 is you made a basic pass, and 4 was you passed with a complication, like an exceptional result. And they're exploding. So if your exceptional result results in another exceptional result, or your failure adds into another failure, it can get really, really crazy really quickly. Like your stray shot blows up the space station and kills 16,000 people, that sort of thing. from a training exercise. This has actually happened, where a training exercise with a gun resulted in a shot that took out the base defenses by basically hitting the thing that you shouldn't hit on the big turbo laser, blew up half the base. So and there you're left as a dungeon master going, and then something worse happens. That's yeah. But I don't actually recommend the D4 system unless you are playing a beer and pretzels game where you're just over a Zoom chat or something like that, and it's all just like narrative and very fast. Don't bother making plans for a game like that. It's just ridiculous.
I invented this system, never used this.
Only under specific supervised situations would you use that game.
It's just too powerful.
Yeah. It's only one page. That game system is one page long, but it will result in madness.
There's actually one other thing I wanted to say, and that is a lot of people think that group checks have only existed in Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 or 4E, and then 5E, they're very much a thing, but they actually existed before then. And I didn't realize this, and that is they used to work very differently. You would get a group check, and it usually consisted of a very large number. It was often around lifting something. And instead of rolling dice, there was no dice roll. Instead, the party would then take whatever ability score they had, not their modifier, their score, and they had to add up whoever's going to be involved in this task, whether it was to move something or do whatever it was, would state in the adventure, you add up their ability score, and if it hit whatever the target number was, they succeeded as a group. And often these would be around lifting a portcullis or moving a boulder or something like that. That's probably the most common one I can think of. And the number they had to hit when they add everything up was like 50 or 60, depending on how hard it was being made. And that's a group check for those of you. And I bet you that system would turn people blue compared to rolling a dice. If they suddenly you're telling me there's no dice roll at all, we're just going to add up scores. I'm like,
we have to do math. Crazy.
Yeah, because of an arbitrary number that's already been predetermined, we're going to add that up, and that's what you succeed or fail with. Wow, that's interesting.
That's almost getting into like a group passive check at that point.
Yeah,
where it's like, do you have the capacity to do this just like at a neutral state, yes or no?
Do you want your Dungeons and Dragons game to be a bunch of players sit down, you say, okay, there's a dungeon, they sit down with some slide rules, and after 15 minutes, we win.
Right. We've added it up. Yeah. And the number is, numbers
according to my Excel spreadsheet, we do indeed slay the dragon. Unfortunately, our barbarian dies, but that's okay.
You see, this is an aggregate 8th level dungeon, and we aggregate at level 15, so there's just no chance. Let's just avoid all this rigmarole and just give us the treasure.
Dear.
Who's going to take one for the team? Okay, you've lost an arm.
Okay, so let us know down in the comments whether you use group checks, how you use them, and why. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.